The fastest way to reverse your diabetes. Is it even possible to reverse type 2 diabetes without medication? And the answer is yes, absolutely. I'm going to show you the 5 simple keys you need to cure your type 2 diabetes. Hi, my name is Dr. Michael Diamonds. I'm a scientist. I majored in biochemistry and microbiology. I am a medical doctor and a professional natural bodybuilder. The reason I'm making this video is so personal. 90 days ago, I told my mom to go see her doctor and to check her blood markers. And when the doctors called to give her feedback on her results, I couldn't believe my ears. Their first suggestion was medication like metformin and Ozempic. And that's for starters. And I told the doctors we'd consider it, but I knew I was going to take the matters into my own hands. I diagnosed my mom with metabolic syndrome, and I wanted to start by reversing her prediabetes. Her HbA1c was at 6.1%. That's just 0.3% away from full-blown type 2 diabetes. So we had work to do. In less than 3 months, we completely reversed her condition. Today, her HbA1c is at 5.3% and she's down nearly 30 pounds, 29.97 to be exact. I promise you can do the same in as fast as 4 weeks if you follow these 5 keys that I'm going to share with you in this video. But let's quickly go over the pathophysiology of type 2 diabetes. So think of your body cells as houses with locks and insulin as the key. When you eat carbs, your blood sugar level rises and your pancreas releases insulin, the key to unlock the cells so your cells can use them for energy. In good insulin sensitivity, the locks and keys work perfectly. Doors open easily and sugar enters the cells more efficiently. But if we overload on sugar consistently, the locks, which are the receptors on our cells, can become rusty. The keys, which is insulin, don't work as well. They struggle to open the door. This is insulin resistance. To compensate, your body makes more keys, more insulin to try and unlock these stubborn locks. Those work for a while, but extra insulin can only do so much. Eventually, the locks become more rusty that even extra keys can't open them. This is prediabetes. Blood sugar level rises because sugar can't enter these cells. If this continues, the locks may fail entirely, or the pancreas in this case can't produce enough keys, and this leads to type 2 diabetes, high blood sugar, and cells lacking the energy that they need. The good news is that we can all these locks by making lifestyle changes that I'm gonna share with you here, and these are the 5 keys. Let's dive straight in. Best way I know how to describe the spectrum that is type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, being normal and insulin resistance being on the far end and type 2 diabetes being on the other extreme, is that picture your living room and imagine a hurricane coming across your living room, and that hurricane is a meal that you're having, right? And all the things on your floor in your living room that has fallen on your floor is glucose, right? That's broken from the carbohydrates. And I'm insulin, right? And I'm picking everything up and putting it where I need to. I'm putting the pillows of the sofa back onto the sofa, and picture the sofa being your muscle. The cupboards in your living room having books fallen down being your brain, and your coffee table being your liver. And glucose is transported into different locations in your body as the main energy source. And as you have a meal that is high in carbohydrates, picture drinking an energy drink or a Coca-Cola, you do this multiple times, repeatedly, excessively. You continue progressing from being normal to pre-diabetic to type 2 diabetic. When you get to the type 2 diabetes level, me, who's been putting everything where it needs to go, I'll get exhausted. I'll be so tired and eventually I'll collapse and pass out from exhaustion. And that is what happens with your body when you progress to type 2 diabetes. And we want to find a way to be able to reverse this so that we, number one, reverse this type 2 diabetes to more of a pre-diabetic range to back to normal. And we're going to share with you the 5 steps to be able to do this. Today, with my panel, I have my doctors with me, my teammates. We're going to talk about the 5 protocols we utilize with our clients to reverse their type 2 diabetes. The first one, that's my personal favorite, is the 1,500 steps post-meal. What's like the logic behind doing 1,500 steps post-meal? Anybody?
So when you start walking immediately after you eat, that is like spending money after you get paid.
Okay.
It's exactly like that. So you're eating your carbohydrates, the rice is in the sugar, it's metabolized there, and you immediately start walking and you're gonna spend the energy, as simple as that. So
Okay.
it's like spending your money when you get paid.
Okay.
So it's gonna reduce the likelihood of buildup of glucose in your blood. The more you walk, the better. It doesn't have to be 15 minutes. If you can go on a longer walk, I would recommend doing so, especially if you're someone who's dealing with diabetes or who is pre-diabetic.
Right, right. So what you're saying is, like in that analogy that I gave of cleaning up the living room, immediately, because you're walking after a meal, you're already getting to the crime scene, you're fixing what the hurricane has done, and you're putting everything where it needs to be immediately, rather than it lingering in your bloodstream, right?
Exactly like that. Yes.
Well, the one thing that I've seen for me personally with doing a 15-minute walk after a meal is, number one, it helps with digestion versus number one, just laying down. It allows us to really move around and improve the digestion process. So like research has shown that moving right after a meal is actually very, very healthy for your overall gut motility. But also, like we just mentioned now, just putting the food where it needs to. And overall, if we're like looking at a glucose spike, we're seeing, if you compare charts of somebody who's not moving post meal and someone who is, that glucose spike is much less severe, right?
The reason walking is also really good is that it's really low impact on your body. So it's really safe to start immediately walking just right after you eat, as opposed to something like doing HIIT or running.
Right, right.
So it doesn't cause any cortisol spike on your body. It's not high impact. It's really, really easy to do, and it works.
Yeah. I would also say, in general, we're talking about doing 1,500 steps or 15 minutes of walking post meal. Bigger picture, it's really about hitting that overall step count at the end of the day, right? If it's 10,000 to 15,000 steps, we will usually, on average, our clients will be at the lower end of 10,000 steps and 15,000 steps throughout a 16-week period with us. And this is exactly what my mom did. We started her at 8,000 steps. And she's actually she likes doing more than she's supposed to. And I told her, hey, you have to stay disciplined. And I told her, start at 8,000 and we'll slowly ramp you up to avoid the cortisol, like Dr. Zeno mentioned. But what happens is that when you're doing the 10 to 15,000 steps daily, you're putting all that extra glucose that would have just been hanging around in your bloodstream to work, right? Like Dr. Zeno mentioned, you're spending your money. So if you do that, not just for one day, but for 50 days, for 100 days, you'll start seeing that your HbA1c, your numbers just start regressing because you've become a lot more efficient at utilizing your glucose. And this is such a healthy habit to implement. Not only that, like what are like the psychological benefits our clients feel from walking?
One of the things that people always try to, they want to tell you that steps are just a number.
Yeah.
And some people really, really, really condone just tracking steps and having a watch on your hand the whole time. But the reality is that steps are just activity. We don't care about the number. I don't. Your body doesn't care about 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000. What your body wants is movement, and steps is movement. And that is basically it. So you could get steps from riding a bike. You're moving.
Yeah.
So with this in mind, we sometimes actually tell clients to just get 70K steps in the week, because it's not really about the specific number on the watch. We just want you to move. And if I want you to move, I want you to average 10,000 steps. That has been the number, to around 12,000 steps, the number that has been proven to be most beneficial in terms of health when it comes to overall week.
Yeah. And I would say even with you saying that, it's just a unit of measurement we like using, right? It's like the one way all of us as humans can find a very easy way to say, hey, what's the unit of measurement we're going to use? How many dollars are we going to spend, right? You can say it's $15,000 you need to spend daily. But that's the first thing. And one of the tips I gave my mom was the first thing I did, I bought her a walking pad. You know, find as many opportunities to make this as easy as possible, as simple as possible. I think that's another reason why the steps are so beneficial. And make it part of your daily life. With reversing your type 2 diabetes, it's a massive lifestyle change that you need to think about, right? And one of them is steps. Step number 2 and protocol number 2 that I want to talk about is resistance training. How does resistance training impact your overall blood glucose?
The resistance training overall is basically lifting weights, or even with resistance bands, you're basically putting your muscles under a lot of stress. This kind of stress is good for your body because now you're allowing your body to use the sugar that it has in the gut. So you're not allowing the sugar to just go to the muscles and be stored as fat or even as in the glucagon stores. Now your body is also using up the glucagon stores that it has. So what's happening there is with your resistance training, your heart rate doesn't go up as high as it would on cardio. It usually doesn't go up to 160s and 180s. However, you are actually using up the glucose that you have. And when you do that once a day, for example, 3 to 6 sessions a week, what you get is you get muscular hypertrophy.
Yeah.
With muscular hypertrophy, these muscles are getting bigger. As they're getting bigger, they're actually using up more and more of your blood glucose in the body, and so you're seeing the overall benefit better and better.
Yeah. So when you say that, as you were explaining that, the idea that I had was like you're just improving your engine capacity, right? And this is like we like telling our clients all the time is this is a long-term investment, right? The muscle tissue you have on your frame in the capacity of, we're just talking about glucose and reversing type 2 diabetes. There's a lot more efficient management of your glucose systems. And this is something, again, like I mentioned, each and every single one of our clients do. I've mentioned to them, and I've changed from the idea of, having a 6-pack being like this gold standard, but every fiber of muscle tissue you have is like this unit currency of longevity. Like even Peter Attia says that it is the most powerful longevity drug. What would you say, Dr. Zeno, that you would recommend for women and men individually in terms of the number of training sessions they need to do per week and what they need to look for in their protocol, respectively, male and female?
I would say it really depends on their starting point. If I have a woman who's just starting to work out, I think 3 days a week, full body will be enough for that person. We can totally up it to 4 or 5, even according to the time they have in their hand.
Okay.
But for a newbie, someone who's just starting to work out, 3 sessions per week, even for man, will be enough. For intermediate trainees, 4 to 5 sessions per week will be enough. And yeah, as you go up to the advanced end of things, 5 to 6 sessions per week, lifting will be enough.
Yeah.
So having more muscle in your body, even when you're seated after a meal, your muscle is gonna just absorb those glucose from your body and stores them in their little glycogen stores in the muscle. So the more muscle mass you have, the more capacity you have to actually store the carbohydrate you're eating daily. So it's really, really important for anyone to be building muscle. It's gonna be like armor on your body. That's gonna keep you young.
That too.
Yeah, so it's gonna be your armor.
Okay.
Whether you're 40, whether you're 50, it's gonna keep you young.
So true.
So anyone has to do resistance training.
And I like that armor analogy because, in women's case, not just in terms of the looks or glucose metabolism, as, you get into your 40s and 50s, osteoporosis is something we need to avoid. And training is going to be the number one protocol that you want to follow, obviously apart from the medication and the supplements that you're taking. But Dr. Z, we're super lucky, and also Dr. Pine, we're super lucky having you guys in one room. Normally it's all of us in a Zoom call. Dr. Z was texting me the other day about like how she builds training plans. I consult Dr. Zeno on building the ladies' training plans. To share with the ladies, what is like just the basic frameworks you're looking at, right? So let's say, if you can tell us briefly a 3-day program, how many workouts are in there?
Okay. So if the person is a beginner and I start them off, let's say with a 3-day plan, I do around 6 to 8 sets per muscle group. I think that'll be enough for someone who's a beginner. And if
is that per week or like per day?
Per week.
Per week. Okay. 6 to 8 sets per muscle group per week.
muscle group per week, I think will be enough.
Got it.
And then if a lady is more toward like intermediate, I would like to give them around 10 to 12 sets per muscle group per week.
Okay. What about for gentlemen, Pioneer?
Mhm.
That's like how we got introduced, and you're into the
Yep.
powerlifting.
Yep. Obviously, based off of their experience level and also their goals, it's very, very important to take their goals into account. You would start them off. Let's say there you have a beginner. You would start them off at eight sets per muscle group per week,
Okay.
and then from then on you can increase sets every week. Sometimes we increase them every month because that's enough.
Yeah.
We could give them more sets, but that's really enough. That's all they need for them to be in their hypertrophy state. Now, if they are, for example, they're a little bit more ambitious and they want to, they want to maximize muscle gain, or they're maybe a little bit advanced, we give them at least 12 sets per muscle group, and we focus heavily on the compound movements.
I love this. As you guys are watching, we are putting a 3-day, 4-day, and a 5-day training split for you guys online. I started this channel 10 years ago with just that objective, that every person can be able to live healthy, or just being able to see the results my mom has. I want that for your mom or your dad. So just take screenshots right now. That's all for you guys, right? So we've touched on the first two protocols. The third protocol, in my personal opinion, and I'd love to ask the doctor's opinions as well, is the most important: nutrition. And following a specific nutrition protocol, doctors, do you guys say that from the first three protocols we mentioned that nutrition is the most important in reversing type 2 diabetes, to be specific?
I think so.
I would say generally, like, lifestyle change, reducing your body fat percentage is the most powerful one, and that is done through exercise and nutrition. But I would say nutrition is the most important one, just because of the environment that we're living in.
Yes.
The type of food that is around us, the food industry that is really, really toxic. So we're constantly surrounded by food that all contain simple sugars, really high GI food. So for those who are watching, GI stands for glycemic index. It's a measurement of how much a glucose spike it causes once you ingest that food.
Got it.
Right. And then we have three different groups of food with GI. We have low GI, medium GI, and high GI. Normally, ideally, we want to stay within the medium and low GI for most of our meals, right? And examples would be a bagel would cause a major glucose spike in your blood. And for someone who's already insulin resistant, which you explained earlier, it causes a massive spike, and your body has to work extra hard to put back those sugar into your cells. Right. So food with high GI is things that should be avoided, especially if someone is pre-diabetic. When it comes to picking food, it's really, really important to pick out the meals, the food that has medium to low GI. For example, if you simply switch white rice every day with sweet potato, so that's a big change. You're reducing the GI of the food that you're eating, and you're causing less insulin spike in your body every time you eat. And timing of the food is also really, really important. It's always better to break your fast with less insulin spike in food. Second, the order of the food is also really, really important, in what order you eat your meal. So let's say you have a plate in front of you. We have veggies here. We have your protein sources like chicken breast, and you have, let's say you have quinoa. It's better to start in this order. First, have your veggies.
Okay.
And so that's going to create like a mesh in your gut, and that's going to reduce the glucose spike by 20 to 30%.
Okay.
And then second thing you want to eat is the protein source, and then the carb source. So food order is also something that you want to look out for. If someone has a question, okay, so when can I have high GI food? The best time to have GI food is either right before your workout or immediately after your workout.
Got it.
Just because your body is going to use it. It's going to spend it like the money I mentioned earlier. So that is the three important things that I have on nutrition. The most important one is picking out the right type of carb, and mostly having from low to medium GI food.
Amazing. I don't think I've ever mentioned the order of food, and I have to agree. There was a time that I had a glucose monitor in me and to test I did that for an entire month, and the order of eating the food definitely had an impact on just that spike overall. I wanted to also ask, just if we were to take a step back, usually on this channel we're talking about, protein, carbs, and fats. How does macros play a role in trying to prevent or reverse type 2 diabetes? Dr. Pine, would you have a strategy? Let's say you have a client, they come in, they're diabetic. What would your strategy be over like a 16-week term with their macros?
So the absolute worst enemy when it comes to type 2 DM is refined sugars.
Got it.
And what counters that is everything else.
Okay.
So what we try to do is, even for someone who is pre-diabetic, they may be able to have some of the faster sugars. But what we try to do is, number one, we try to keep them away from those.
Any examples of like some refined sugars just for the audience?
Cinnamon rolls.
Cinnamon rolls, the good stuff. The good
I love
stuff.
cinnamon rolls.
The good stuff.
Good stuff, yeah. Cake, even the fruit juices and fruits themselves as well.
My mom's fridge is full of the juices. She was like, "Oh, the juice is healthy. The juice is healthy." It's full of that.
That is the worst thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's the worst thing.
Juices do have some of the micronutrients, but they're basically just sugar and water, essentially color and natural sugar and water. So what we try to do is we try to combine this carb source with protein and fat, and that is what's going to help most with the glycemic index. So as Dr. Z mentioned, the glycemic index is the sugar spike, basically, after a meal. This sugar spike that would normally go up like this, when you combine this sugar source with a protein and a fat, and they have it together, the spike, instead of going up like this, is slowed down. And it's very simple. It's actually mechanical. The absorption is slowed down because now it is competing with fats and with proteins for absorption. And fats and proteins take a while longer to be absorbed and to be digested. So what happens is this spike is just blunted and doesn't go up as fast as it would otherwise. Now, of course, something that really, really helps here is another carb source, fibers. Fibers really slowed down the spike, and that's why we recommend that people have more veggies, sweet potatoes, and more fiber sources. It really just slows down this glycemic index, this glycemic spike. And so to answer your question, when we build this plan, we try to combine this sugar, even if it's not in the faster, more refined form. Try to combine this like white rice with a fat source and with a protein source. That is, to date, the healthiest way to build these plans.
The style we build, and we call it nutritional biochemistry, is that and I was saying this today, every gram of food fights for its place on our clients' plates. But if I could also give the picture and draw a picture to the audience, is like we mentioned before, that we're looking at total steps, right? That we want a person to do in a week, total steps we want to do in a month for that efficiency. A very simple way we also just do in terms of like what we did with my mom, for example, is we will assign a certain amount of carbohydrates we want someone to eat and control that, right? And again, for the audience, carbohydrates simply in the digestive process in your alimentary canal is broken down into sugars. So not to demonize carbohydrates, what we're demonizing is the chronic overeating of carbohydrates, and we want to just control that. So I'll give you an example. With my mom, we started her at 250 grams of carbs. I encourage you to study what we just spoke about, the glycemic index. So literally just type up glycemic index on Google Images, and it will always show you the spectrum of low GI foods, and you'll see all the pictures of it. You'll see medium GI foods, and simply just pick from that picture, hey, these are going to be my carb sources. Right, you'll see oats in the low. Oats is there like borderline low GI.
It's medium, yeah. So, for example, if you're having cornflakes, replace it with oat. So that's
there
like
you
a simple
go.
example.
Switching gears onto protocol number 4 is sleeping 7 to 8 hours. I truly feel that sleep is the birth of all these issues for a lot of people. We are living in a world where chronic sleep is a pandemic at this stage. People sleeping 5 to 6 hours. Any of you guys care to explain how does sleep actually impact your blood glucose, and how will sleep improve and reverse your type 2 diabetes?
While you sleep, that is the time your body just recovers, and that is the time when your body, it's like, okay, let's get to work. Let's implement all these changes. Let's just implement the body. Let's lose the fat. Let's gain the muscle. Let's increase decrease the blood sugars, the sugar in the blood. Let's take them to these cells. That's those cells. Let's not take them to those cells. So sleep is where recovery happens, basically.
For everything, like every organ, everything is getting some rest. I actually think I'd have done so much better if I realized that in the very early parts of my career. I'd have probably crushed it sooner.
I see sleep as the binders of everything else you're doing when you do any lifestyle change. So if you're not sleeping enough, for the next day, you're more likely having cravings, and especially to sweets.
Oh, yes.
And your hunger hormones are going to go crazy on you. So if you're not sleeping well, you're more likely to ingest more calorie next day, especially sweets. Good quality sleep for 7 hours can help you keep your hunger hormones in check, namely ghrelin and leptin. Yeah, I would say sleep is the second most important thing when it comes to reversing being pre-diabetic.
The protocol we like using as a foundation, and then we build up from there, is what we call 10-3-2-1. Again, 10 hours before bed, you want to stop the caffeine. The logic behind that is that caffeine keeps you awake, and we need to take into consideration its half-life. 3 and 10-3-2-1 is 3 hours before bed. You want to stop having any meals. That's your last meal. This is where you're not giving your factory any more energy and components to break down. 2 hours before bed, no more liquids. We don't want to be waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. This is very, very common. 1 hour before bed, reducing your exposure to blue light. And, all these devices, your TV screen, your phone, act as sun, right? In terms of the blue light being exposed, so you don't have melatonin production. One thing we do now at Sculpt by Science is that when someone joins, the first thing we do is we make sure we get them blue light blockers so that they can regulate their circadian rhythm. That people struggle with. Any other tips you guys feel that would help with sleep?
One other thing that is actually very relatable to all of us is the content that we consume right before bed. So we have this hour that we go to bed, we try to wind down, and we call the wind down, right? Everybody wants to wind down before they go to bed. How do we wind down? You watch shorts, reels, whatever. What is the content we're watching? There's a Red Bull video of a man flying. Yeah. Someone is being bitten by a snake. This is literally giving you an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
You're sweating in your bed trying to go to sleep. Your heart rate is raising. We're basically winding up.
Yeah.
We're not really winding down. So
even the dopamine hits that you're taking.
We're getting these little dopamine hits right before bed, and we wonder, I've been in bed 2 hours and I'm still not falling asleep.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, another important hygiene I would mention is don't hang out in your bed. So treat your bed as the only space that you're gonna go there and you want to fall asleep at that point.
So another thing is also like keep your phones outside of your bedroom. Absolutely. If you have that opportunity. Now, again, these are the conversations we have in depth with our clients over the 4 months we work together. The protocol number 5, cortisol. How does cortisol impact type 2 diabetes, and how can we reverse and manipulate cortisol so we can reverse type 2 diabetes?
Cortisol, known as the stress hormone, already has a few functions in the body. It's a naturally occurring hormone. It's a good hormone. It does induce gluconeogenesis, which means it increases blood sugars. So first and foremost, cortisol does increase blood sugar. And cortisol is increased in response to stress.
Got it.
So one very important thing is that in response to chronic stress, you will have chronically elevated blood sugars. Chronic stress is where the issues arise. Talking about type 2 diabetes, what happens is chronic stress, chronic cortisol, chronic elevation of blood sugars. And so that is one way that chronic stress or cortisol does affect type 2 diabetes. It either worsens it or even in some cases induces it.
We get a lot of our clients actually being like, hey, how do I know if my cortisol is elevated? So my 2 questions is, any way for someone to check their cortisol? And then the second thing is, what are some interventions we can do to bring this chronic stress down?
So of course, yes, there are ways to test for it. Just a simple blood check, and it would be best to test for it throughout the day, actually. So there are a bunch of ways to test for it. We can test for cortisol itself. We can test for growth hormone, and we can test for a bunch of other stuff as well.
And then any interventions you guys use with your clients in terms of bringing it down? Yeah.
So sleep is when your body gets rid of the cortisol, and if you don't sleep for 7 hours, your body won't have enough time to get rid of all the cortisol that you were building up throughout the day. So start simple. See if this person's sleep is in check. And second thing, your favorite thing is meditation. The effect is big. If possible, if the client has a lot of time on their hand, is instead of walking inside on the walking pad, go walk outside.
For other people, it's breath work, lifestyle changes, the resistance training, the walking. All of these factors play a major role, especially for women. I think more than men, women need to pay more attention. There's just so many more things in a woman's life cycle that play a role compared to men. Of course, have their own. But we notice it a lot more with women, that we need to have a more in-depth conversation about stress and how to manage that. I know you got a message the other day from a client of ours who was just thanking you for, helping her learn about her body and for her being kind to her body. And again, it gets into the very woo-woo, but if you're dealing with all the issues, if you're dealing with type 2 diabetes, it's time to pay attention. I think that's a perfect place to end off, unless you have something to add, Dr.
I
Ryan.
do, actually.
Yeah, tell us. Blow our minds some more.
Something that is really important, by the way, do you guys know what one of the healthiest demographics is?
In terms of people or countries?
In terms of people. So it's farmers. And when you look into that, farmers have one of the highest life expectancies of anyone in the world.
Cool.
And when you look into that, farmers implement these 5 things without us telling them, by the way. And they don't know about much. I mean, they may know about much else about life. Farmers implement these 5 things, and their life expectancy is higher. And this is farmers all over the world. So it's not just farmers in this country or that country. So it doesn't take race into account. It doesn't take location into account, not even weather. But if you think about it, a farmer moves a lot. They have a relatively good diet for the most part. They have good sleep. And because most of them stay away from news and TV, they don't have a lot of life stressors. So they implement these things, and their life expectancy is the highest of almost anyone in the world. And importantly, whenever I'm in the hospital, I also practice in-house medicine. So whenever I have a patient and they're a farmer, they never have any chronic diseases.
Wow.
And I haven't seen a single person who is an old farmer, 80-year-old, with a long-term illness.
We'll leave it right there. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys want to see more and what your experience is with these 5 steps. Is there anything else you did that was very unique in your journey with reversing the type 2 diabetes? And for anybody who is interested in working with us, I know the doctors have very little availability, but you can apply. First link in the description. We'll leave it there.